In this video, I'll be discussing some of the features of the Z5C RGB analog color modulator that was designed specifically for the Z5 analog abstract generator. However, it can be adapted to work with other consoles as well. So the Z5C is broken up into 5 main sections. We have 3 oscillators, 1 chopping circuit, and a final output stage circuit where we can select between having an off position on the switch here to a full on position for each color, or to the modulated signal coming from the Z5C. So when in the full on position, we can manipulate the brightness of the output to what is most appropriate and then build an abstract from there. And then once an abstract pattern is created, we can flip over to modulation and set the pattern that looks best. So going over to the individual circuits here, each oscillator has a couple different sections here. We can output the data from this oscillator to either RGB or any combination, or one particular color, or it could be white. From there, if I change this over to color modulation, now it's receiving a signal from the oscillator here when this position of this potentiometer is centered, and we have it outputting to red. Here I could change that to green or one of the other colors just by doing that. So now the output of this oscillator will go only to green. So from here, this potentiometer, I can fade out completely of the modulation or fade back in, and the center position is where the signal is a full 0 to 5 volts. And if I pan to the right, I can slowly fade away to full image brightness. Now we're currently sending a square wave. I'll change that to a sine wave. And as you can see, I'm slowly going into the sine wave and then completely away. So the center position of this potentiometer is ideal for full color modulation. So from here we can also go back to a square wave, a sawtooth wave, or a sine wave. We also have 3 positions for the effective frequency of the output of the oscillator, whereas it will go from a couple hertz all the way up to 10 kilohertz. And once again, I can output this to any of the 3 colors or a combination of them. Like so. Beyond that, we have a couple other features within this oscillator where we can sync to an external source. And by that I mean we try to lock onto a harmonic of a signal that's coming into the Z5C. In this case, I have a choice between an external 1, 2, or 3, or I can lock on to one of the other 2 oscillators. The external 1, 2, 3 correspond to the 3 main oscillators on the Z5C. So if I flip over to EXT1, which is my current signal source displaying the circle, now I will adjust rate until I can find a point at which the oscillator is able to lock. And if I change this to a sawtooth wave, it'll be a little easier to see. Alright, so it has locked onto a harmonic of the incoming signal, and that's not a very good one. I'll keep going. And so there's another harmonic that I've found. If I increase the frequency, we can continue to find other harmonics that the oscillator will attempt to lock onto. From there, another feature, and I'll go back to this guy here. Another feature here is invert, so I can change which side has locked, basically, of the signal there. From there, I also have a duty cycle adjustment, and this is only enabled when this switch is in the up position. In the center position, modulation for the duty cycle is not coming from the LFO here that's within this oscillator, and it's not coming from this potentiometer either. It's dead center. When I flip this to the up position, now I am adjusting the duty cycle of this signal, and there are at points where it makes it more difficult for the oscillator to lock onto a harmonic, and sometimes we'll have to make an adjustment there. As you can see, there is the adjustment for duty cycle, and again this can be inverted to where now it's the other side of the signal. In the down position, we are now locking onto this LFO, which can drive some frequency modulation and duty modulation of the main oscillator, only if I bring this up. So as you can see, I get this sort of an effect. It is currently modulating the duty cycle by a sawtooth wave, which I can change to a square wave. I can adjust the frequency of this. And again, this is a 3-position switch, once again, allowing you to adjust between 3 different frequency ranges. Beyond that, we also have a frequency modulation control. And for that, I will return duty modulation back to normal. And here is a frequency modulation, which is slightly different than the duty modulation. So next we'll move to the next oscillator, oscillator 2 here, and we will assign him to green. And from here we can lock him to oscillator 1 and look for the harmonic. There he is. So now we can do something like that. And we can assign this last oscillator to blue. And lock him to oscillator, or sync him to oscillator 2 to create a kind of an effect like that. And so this is fully synced, all 3, or this one is synced to number 2, number 2 is synced to number 1, number 1 is synced to the external oscillator. If I turn him off, that kind of goes crazy. So from there, we can add chopping from the chopping circuit, which can be one of 3 ranges, again up to 10 kilohertz. Can be a sine wave, square wave, or triangle wave. With the square wave, as you can see, we tend to get the pretty hard corners. And with the sine wave, and then we can back off of the gain of this a bit, and we get some softer edges to that. Or if we go back to square wave, once again, we can adjust duty cycle for this. We'll go back the other way with it. Like so. So going back to the individual oscillators, let's turn off the sync. We'll take the gains down. Go back to the first one here and just kind of create something cool. Go back to a 2 and we'll go sine wave. So just because I have one oscillator outputting to a color doesn't mean I can have the next oscillator also outputting to the same color. also send him to as a sign. And sometimes bringing the one down just to manipulate the other is helpful. Let's see if I can find. Pretty much what the other one is doing here. And let's set these back to square wave. And you could start to create some interesting patterns like that. And then come over to the last oscillator and add something different, perhaps in a different color. And then on top of all of that, add chopping as well. Now going back to the LFOs here, some of the effects that we can get from that. Let's just bring this up to a higher rate of speed here. And we'll add some frequency modulation. And we start getting effects like that. Alright, I hope this helps anyone trying to use the Z5C, take advantage of some of the features to it. It is a bit of challenging to learn and understand, but once you begin to get a good handle for it, you can create some very colorful abstracts. Thanks for watching.